So I know that the beginning part of this is going to be a review for probably all of you, but I like to start with it so that there's a consistent framework for when we're saying sensory processing and what that means, right? So when I'm talking about sensory processing, I am primarily thinking about how our body takes in all of the information from the environment and ourselves and brings it all into our central nervous system, into our brain, and makes sense of the world for us. And the most important piece is that for us, right? Where we all process slightly differently. And when we do anything in our interactions that is based on the way that we are perceiving the world in that moment. And that's what we're responding to. So we do consider our vestibular sense, kind of just a quick refresher for those who might need it or might be new to this information, that yes, there are the senses that we learn about in kindergarten, but then there are these other senses that we don't, that typically when they're doing their job, we don't need to know what they're doing because they're just doing what they're supposed to, right? So our vestibular sense being basically our internal GPS system, primarily helping with our balance, our spatial understanding, how do we fit through in space, how do we navigate through space, and then translating all the way down to our symbolic spatial understanding and our abstract spatial understanding of things like putting a sentence on a line on a piece of paper, or knowing how to line up our math problems right on a piece of paper, and how we have to experience that in our body, all of those spatial relationships in order to do it in that more abstract cognitive way. Joining that would be our proprioceptive sense, and primarily being our body position, right? So proprioception primarily focusing on our body in relation to our body, right? So every time we're doing something and we're getting this feedback of this is where we are in space, this is where my hand is in relation to my trunk, this is where my feet are, to help guide all of our actions. And how lovely that we have these senses along with our tactile sense to map our body and to help us automatically navigate, right? So that there are things that we don't really have to think about doing, because these systems are providing enough information for us to be able to do what we need to do, and providing a grounded, very organized experience of where we are and where somebody else is, and how we and that person fit together, both within that space and within our understanding of each other. And for this presentation, that's really what we want to think about, is how do these systems support the relationship? How do we understand, how does understanding ourselves and our body position and our body position in space support our understanding of another person, our understanding of the other person's understanding of us, and how does it support our reciprocity in relationships? So when we're thinking about the importance of sensory processing, as always, the big things is our biggest is joy in life, right? But really, how do we work within our relationships? How do we function within our roles and routines that we need to do every single day? What is our social engagement like? How do we communicate with other people? How do we work within emotional control and regulation? And all of these things that are primarily the ones that we hear about, right? When we get calls, and when if we're a parent, what we care about it for our children is how we're working in these areas, and remembering that these sensory systems are foundational to everything that's up in the top, but not only from an assessment standpoint, but also from a treatment standpoint. Like, not only can we work on our sensory systems to support our relationships, but we can also do things within our relationships that support our sensory systems, which is the foundation for today. A big part of my work talks a lot about the importance of the sensory emotional reactivity, meaning that there's a bidirectional connection between the sensations that we experience, the emotions that we experience, the actions that we then do, which ultimately become a pattern of behavior, which then can be seen as our temperament or our personality, right? And yes, this is all going both directions, right? So if we have a certain way of being in our relationships, a certain pattern of behavior in our relationships, that action and behavior and pattern and routine actually brings about emotions, emotional experiences. And those emotions can impact our sensations that we feel and experience, right? So we can look at this in any direction where we experience a sensation, which sparks an emotional experience, which has us act a certain way in a certain pattern, becomes our personality. Or if we just become, if our really, like you'll hear people say, well, that's just how we are in our relationship, right? This is just this is just how I am with my mom. This is just how I am with my dad, which means that is a pattern. But what is that pattern of behavior based off of? And if we can understand how the sensory systems are contributing to just how we are in that relationship, if there's something we don't love about just the way we are in that relationship, then maybe there's something we can change by working on these sensory areas.